Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 28 team selection where I've got flag players, rotation risks, and we need to start prepping for Blank Game Week 29. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, a couple of important notes before we jump into my Game Week 28 team selection. First being, I didn't actually upload a Game Week preview video this week because I did a chip strategy video instead. And if you've not watched my chip strategy video, I highly recommend doing so. It's about 35 minutes, which is a long one, but I go through all of the blanks, doubles, when they're likely to be, and the best time to play your chips based on current knowledge. So do go and watch that. But if you also want my opinion on the best defenders to buy, the best forwards to buy, and much, much more, please make sure to go and check out FPL Therapy, which was released yesterday, which is my new podcast in studio for this Premier League season. I'll flash it up on your screen now. Just type in FPL Therapy on Spotify, Apple, or on YouTube. Go and watch or listen to that episode, and it's about an hour and a half, and I talk through all of the permutations and the players that you should be looking to bring in for Game Week 28. So hopefully that is helpful for you. But this is about my team selection and what I need to do with my team. As things stand right now, I've got 3 free transfers and 1.9 million in the bank. And remember that we've got Blank Game Week 29 next week, where Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Villa, and Liverpool are all blanking. So really, as much as I do want to get points this week, my eye is on Game Week 29. And the final thing, before I actually go through and discuss the players, is I am still penciling in, based on what I said in the chip strategy video, a Game Week 31 wildcard. So as of right now, I just think that is the best window to wildcard, because in Game Week 31, there is a lot of fixture swings. So for the players that I currently own, their fixtures look pretty good in Game Week 30. I don't need a wildcard in Game Week 30, but in Game Week 31, when you look at the team, it starts to look a bit dodgy. We know that we've got that double game week in 32 for Newcastle and Crystal Palace, and then we are very likely to have a double in 33 and a blank in 34. So for me, I think Game Week 31 wildcard makes the most sense there. And also, that is when we are most likely to get the information about the blanks and doubles for the remainder of the season. So if we are penciling in a wildcard in Game Week 31, I'd say I'm 90% likely to wildcard in 31. What I'm really looking at in FPL now is the next 3 weeks. I'm not looking beyond the next 3 weeks, but I'm also not just looking at this week. I'm viewing it purely as a 3-game week block, and that will help me to make decisions. So if you are also penciling in a wildcard in 31, which I think will be very popular, you can do a very similar thing as well. So with that in mind, let's go through the team, my current watch list, and then how I'm planning on preparing for Blank Game Week 29. So let's start with Jordan Pickford. Wolves away this week is a pretty decent fixture, given that Cunha is, of course, suspended. Do I think Wolves could score? Absolutely, but it definitely makes their attack a lot blunter. We saw that when Cunha was suspended previously, that they did struggle to create chances quite often. Obviously, Strand Larsen's back. It is away, so I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves score, but this isn't a bad fixture for Pickford. And of course, next week he's got West Ham at home. So for the next 2 weeks, Pickford serves me very well. Because I'm wildcarding in 31, that does mean that in Game Week 30, I sadly have to play Pickford against Liverpool away. So that's the only fixture really where I don't love it for Pickford, but you never know. Stranger things have happened, and he probably will at least make a lot of saves in that game. So yeah, Jordan Pickford, absolutely fine. I definitely won't be owning Jordan Pickford on a wildcard, because for the remainder of the season, the fixtures really aren't there for Everton, and they're not going to likely have any remaining doubles either. For this week, the defence actually looks really good. So if I'm focusing on 28, that back three of Munoz against Ipswich at home, Gabriel against United away, who are so poor in attack at the moment without Ahmad, and then Trent against Southampton at home, that feels brilliant. Even on the bench, I've got Anthony Robinson against Brighton away, who I'd be perfectly happy starting. I think Fulham have beat Brighton a couple of times, like 1-0. They've been quite low-scoring games. And now, this season, I had to double-check this, Fulham are up to 3rd for expected goals conceded this season in the Premier League. So they are, by all accounts, a top 4 defence. And so I'm perfectly happy, and you know how much assist threat he's got, if I have to have Robinson in the starting 11 this week, doing so. Of course, my 5th defender is then Van den Berg, who is currently injured, and as of right now, I don't have a definitive update on the possibility of him being back for Game Week 29. So for this week, definitely don't need to make a transfer. If we're then thinking about Game Week 29, though, Munoz blanks, Trent blanks, Gabriel and Robinson don't have great fixtures, but they're fine. And then Van den Berg obviously has Bournemouth away, which isn't great, and he's injured at the moment. So let's go off the basis that Munoz, Trent, and Van den Berg won't be available for me. I need to make at least 1 defender transfer in order to field 3 defenders. But because I want to keep certain attackers, and I might want to have a bit of squad depth as well, I'm probably looking at making 2 defender transfers in Game Week 29. Now, we'll discuss my watch list when it comes to that, but the top 2 players for me as of right now are Gvardiol and 8 Nuri. Do I want to make either of them this week? Well, not really, unless we think there is a major doubt that any of my starting 3 don't play. But then even if that is the case, then I've got Robinson. So I really don't think I need to make a defender transfer this week. The only slight concern, I suppose, would be with Trent. Given that the PSG game, as of right now, it's 1-0 to Liverpool from the first leg. I was going to say I have no idea how Liverpool won that game. I do. Alisson Becker, arguably the greatest goalkeeper in Premier League history. Definitely the greatest goalkeeper in the world right now. Let me know if you think this is going to cause a massive debate in the comments. Let me know if you think Alisson is the greatest goalkeeper in Premier League history. But that performance was sensational. Anyway, the game is very close from the first leg, which means that they're going to have to play very full strength in that second leg. It's not like they're carrying a 4-0 lead into the second leg. So could Trent get reduced minutes? Absolutely he could. But with Connor Bradley being out, I just don't see him starting Quansah. Like, could Quansah come on about 65, 70s, give Trent some time to rest? Absolutely. But I still think that Trent starts. So yeah, as of right now, no real concerns with that defence. I think it looks pretty good this week. At the end of the video, we'll discuss what I'm planning on doing with the defence for Game Week 29. Let's now take a look at the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, it is a little bit of a state at the moment in a couple of positions, although one of those positions I'm fairly happy with, at least for this week, but we'll do what we always do, which is start with Salah and Palmer. Salah is going to be my captain this week. I do think that his minutes could be slightly reduced, but with Salah, what we've seen now, even under Klopp, but especially under Arne Slot, Salah's version of a rest is what we saw against PSG, which he comes off at 85 minutes. Even when we think Salah might get slightly reduced minutes, he doesn't really. We know that Liverpool haven't won the league yet, although they pretty much have. We know that Salah is chasing pretty much every record that has ever been set in the Premier League. I just don't see him being benched for this game. So I think he'll start. I'm fairly confident he starts. And I just don't think we've seen anything to suggest that Salah is struggling with fitness or that he'll come off at 60 minutes in any game. The only way that I see Salah coming off pre-75 minutes, or let's say pre-70 minutes, would be if they're already winning 4 or 5-0. And if Liverpool are already winning 4 or 5-0, Salah has already done the damage you would imagine in most cases. And I think if they're winning 1 or 2-0 and it's a little bit tighter, Salah will stay on the pitch. So my prediction for Salah's minutes, and this could be massively wrong, is somewhere between 75 and 85. So let's go on a more conservative basis. Let's say it's 75 minutes. Would I prefer 75 of Salah against Southampton at home or 90 of Palmer against Leicester at home? I think that's close, by the way, but I would still say Salah. If you told me that Salah gets 60, I would prefer Palmer. I would rather the extra half an hour because I don't think there's as much to separate them as some people think. So I would go through how many expected minutes you think Salah will have. And I think if it's over 70 to 75, I think Salah is the standout captain for me. I think if it's less than that, or you think there's a very good chance he's benched, then go ahead and captain Palmer because Leicester at home is a great fixture for him. I will be selling one of Palmer or Salah in Game Week 29. I'm almost certain of it. And I'm 95% sure that'll be Palmer because I just don't want to sell Salah. The fixtures after the blank in 29 are fantastic. And on the current strategy that I'm considering, I won't be free hitting in the 34 if things go as they're planned at the moment, which means I'd want Salah for Game Week 34 because I can't free hit him in for that. And I just think Salah's a better asset than Palmer. So if I have the option to sell Palmer rather than sell Salah, I'll do that. And the reason I want to do that is, of course, to go out there and get Erling Haaland for 29 and 30. So yeah, I probably will be selling Cole Palmer, but for this week, there's absolutely no need or desire to sell him before Leicester at home. And honestly, I'm delighted to have Enzo in the team for this week. And please let me know if you watch this game and you agree with me, because I feel like I'm just like, I'm just trying to justify having Enzo in my team. But if you watch the Southampton game, Chelsea-Southampton, Enzo was brilliant. He had 3 big chances created, 7 key passes. If Palmer could hit the target, Enzo would have had 2 assists. Both of Palmer's big chances that he missed were assisted by Enzo. Not only did Enzo have 3 big chances and 7 key passes, he was also extremely, and I mean like inches away from getting on the end of 2 different crosses. I think one was from Neto, one might have been from Palmer. He was honestly like so close to not only a return in that game, but we're talking sort of 12 to 15 points. So I'm happy to have him again for Leicester. It's another game where, in these games where Chelsea dominate the ball, yes, Enzo might be playing a slightly deeper role without Lavia, without Reece James in the team. but he's still able to push forward. And of course, in this game, if they do play someone alongside Caicedo, it could be that Enzo does have the license to get forward. So I don't think he's a great asset moving forward. But for this game, I think he's great. The issue is he then plays Arsenal away in 29. And based on transfers, I might be in a position where I either have to take a hit if I don't want Enzo, or I just have to play Enzo against Arsenal away. So I really need him to go big this week to give me the confidence that he might be a fine hold for 29 as well. So, yeah, I'm not kidding myself. I'd rather have Semenyo, Kluivert instead of Enzo, but he's okay for this week. On Brian Mbeumo, really fine, decent asset. I think he can get points in any game. And actually, I quite like the Aston Villa at home game for him. This is a matchup which I quite like. Villa actually have been pretty poor defensively over the last 10 game weeks. They're in the bottom 3 for expected goals conceded. So they're not necessarily a defence that are keeping teams at bay. We know that Brentford are really good at home. We know that Mbeumo is better at home as well. And I think he's been a little bit unlucky not to have more returns in recent weeks. So I'm perfectly happy having him. Bournemouth away in game week 29 isn't ideal. He then has Newcastle in game week 30, but largely speaking, Brian Mbeumo is going to be fine for the next 3 weeks, and then we will be saying goodbye to Brian on the game week 31 wildcard. I just can't see myself keeping him for game week 31 and beyond. The real issue in my team, overall, but also the issue in my midfield, is Dango Ouattara. This was a bad transfer. There's no sugarcoating it. It was bad. The reason it was bad is I made this transfer 2 weeks ago on Thursday evening because he was predicted to go up in price. Not only did he not go up in price on the Thursday evening, but on the Friday morning, we got the news that Evan-Ilson was soon to be back. So if I'd have just not chased the price, and this is a good reason not to make early transfers, but if I'd have not chased that price change, I wouldn't have bought Dango. I would have definitely gone for a Semenyo or a Kluivert. I had the money. Like, look, I've got the money in the bank. I went for Dango because I thought Evan-Ilson would be back around 29:30 and that he would be eased back in. I don't see a world in which Dango starts this, sadly. And I know that he doesn't have to start as the 9, but I am 80% sure, 90% sure that Evan-Ilson starts this game as the 9, right? So you've got Evan-Ilson as the 9, you've got Kluivert as the 10, and you've got Semenyo in one of the wing spots. There is a potential, I suppose, that Dango starts in one of the other wing spots. I've now spoken to 3 Bournemouth fans. I speak to new Bournemouth fans all the time, so I want to know, like, is there a chance? All 3 of them have him predicted to be on the bench. I think 2 of them had Tavernier, and then one said that Brooks could start. But they've got Tavernier, who for me probably is a first choice winger ahead of Dango. Brooks has been brilliant this season, by the way, especially in the last couple of months. And also, Sinistera is now back. Sinistera can play as the 9. Sinistera can also play off the wing as well. So there is not even confirmation that Dango would be the first player to come off the bench. What we could see is Evan-Ilson, Kluivert, Semenyo, Tavernier, and then for Tavernier or Kluivert, whoever gets sub first, it could be Brooks. Then if Evan-Ilson comes off, it could be Sinistera. I think this is incredibly harsh because Dango has been really good in the absence of Evan-Ilson. He's scored a lot of goals and he's really linked up the play well, but he's not as good as Evan-Ilson. And arguably in that wing position, he's arguably not as good as Tavernier and Brooks as well. So this is just a stinking position to be in. So when I look at this, after going through it the way I just did, maybe I should just sell Dango this week, right? Just say, Ross, you made a mistake. It might force you to take a hit in 29. Sell Dango for Kluivert or Semenyo. Just go sideways, bring in a Bournemouth attacker that you know will play, and then leave it there. And maybe that's what I should do. But part of me is telling, you just don't know. I don't think that there's any chance Dango starts this, but who's to say Iraola agrees with that? Iraola might think, no, I think Dango deserves to start on the wing. And if I sell Dango this week for Semenyo, and then Dango starts on the wing, I'm going to be gutted, and especially if he has a good game and scores a goal, because then he might also start in 29. There's also, you just don't know what happens with the rest of the team. I don't wish this upon anybody, of course, but let's say that Semenyo or Kluivert pick up an injury, or Evan-Ilson re-aggravates his injury. All of a sudden, Dango's back in the starting 11, probably. So, I'm wondering, is it worth giving it this week? Because worst case scenario, Dango gets like a 10 to 15 minute cameo off the bench. He's really good off the bench. He scored a few times already this season off the bench, so he could do damage, especially if he comes on for Evan-Ilson. And then maybe I assess ahead of game week 29 whether I think there's a chance he starts Brentford. I just don't know whether it's worth using a transfer on it this week. The reason I'm so frustrated is I was going to bench him this week. You can see sat on my bench right now, we'll discuss the forwards, is Jean-Philippe Mateta against Ipswich at home. If not for that ridiculous, I was going to say challenge, but it was virtually assault on Mateta from that goalkeeper, the Millwall goalkeeper. then I'd be benching Dango. It would be no issue. I could give it another week of information and I'd be starting my boy Jean-Philippe, but I can't do that now because he's probably out. We've not had confirmation, but he's probably out. So let me know what you think in the comments. I think Salah, Palmer, Enzo, and Burmo all playing at home are all fine for this week. Do I give Dango one more week, assess what happens with Bournemouth, and then deal with it in 29? Or do you think I just sell him this week with the 3 free transfers I've got? I've got some wiggle room and just accept that it was a bad transfer to start with. That's the midfield. Let's take a look at the 2 forwards, the watch list, and then plan ahead. So moving on to the 3 forwards, and again, on Jean-Philippe Mateta, as of me recording this, which is early on Thursday morning, we don't know 100% that he's definitely out for Game Week 28, but I would be so surprised if he plays. He had 25 stitches in his head, which is already pretty bad. To try and play football with some fresh stitches in your head, I doubt he's going to play. But also, I don't think it was just the kick to the sort of the cut or the graze. I think it was also concussion because his head got thrown back pretty quickly from the kick. So, I mean, it was, again, borderline assault. I don't even think you can call that a challenge. But I'm going to go off the basis that Mateta's out. Obviously, if he's not, none of this matters. I just start Mateta instead of Dango, and then everything is good in the world, and I'm very, very happy. Like, look at that team if Mateta was in there instead of Dango. It's a beautiful team. Like, the front 3 that I've been loving for so long, the 4 midfielders all having home fixtures, the defence looks great. It's really just that Dango spot that I'm not particularly happy with. But at the moment, I'm going to go off the basis Mateta's not available. On ISAK, on the thumbnail, I've got a flag on him. He's still not flagged in FPL. So what happened is he came off apparently limping towards the end of the game. Eddie Howe said that it wasn't an injury, it was just tightness. Eddie Howe is a flat-out liar. He's not just someone that conceals the truth. He actually lies quite often. So I wouldn't really trust anything Eddie Howe says. And that's why the press conference isn't going to be very useful when we find out from Eddie Howe how ISAK's doing. But he did say that it was just tightness. So we were like, okay, he's got 8 days between the 2 games. He's probably going to play. Then yesterday, on Wednesday, lots of information started coming out from pretty reliable, we call them ITK accounts, in the know accounts from Newcastle. And it was like a good 4 or 5 pretty reliable sources were all saying that apparently ISAK was out for the final. So not only for the West Ham game, but also for the final. So I was like, oh, so it was classic Eddie Howe lying. ISAK's out. Then yesterday evening, an account called Keith Downey from Sky Sports, he tweeted a picture of ISAK and he said, I'll put it on your screen. I was at the Newcastle training ground today for the Carabao Cup final media access day, and Alexander ISAK was conducting interviews, moving well, and in good spirits ahead of the upcoming games. Don't let the rumours get out of control. A couple of things. Well, the main thing being, that doesn't tell us that he's not injured, right? He could have an injury and still be there doing the media stuff to not let the opposition know that he's going to be out. Also, just because like you're moving well doesn't mean that you don't have an injury. You can very easily walk if you do have an injury. So I don't think that tells us 100% that he's fine. But I would say that if it was a serious injury, which it probably would have to be to keep him out of the final, he also probably wouldn't be there doing the media stuff. They'd probably have someone else doing it instead. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But then I come back to, do they need to play him in this game? Is it worth risking him against West Ham when the cup final is next weekend? It's probably not worth it. But Eddie Howe has mentioned a few times that he believes in match fitness and rhythm. And if ISAK doesn't play this West Ham game, he's had a couple of weeks off before playing then the cup final. A couple of weeks, you can get out of your rhythm a little bit with that. So I don't know where to go with this. I think my gut feeling tells me that if he is okay, he will play. I don't think they'll risk him, but if they think he's fit, I think they'll give him 60 to 70 minutes to just keep his match fitness and rhythm there. But I think if there is any doubt, if he's not fully fit, I just don't see them risking it, because we have seen without ISAK in the team, they're toothless. Like, Callum Wilson's a fine forward, but I just don't think it's worth the risk if he's not there. So if you want the objective news, he's not flagged in FPL. Keith Downey here is reporting that he was at the media access day looking fine. Eddie Howe said that it wasn't an injury. So by all accounts, he looks like he should play, but there is still some doubt associated with him. I don't want to sell him though, and I don't want to bench him, because we know with Eddie Howe, players can make very miraculous recoveries. We've seen it with Gordon in the past. And so I want to start him on the chance that he starts. So for me, unless we get news, not from Eddie Howe, because I don't trust him, but unless we get news from someone else reliable that he's out, I think I'll just be starting ISAK. And then Chris Wood, Man City at home. Not the best fixture for him, but also not bad. We spoke about an FPL therapy actually this week. I think Elanga and Hudson-Odoi against whoever plays at right back and Gvardiol could have a lot of joy. So I think Chris Wood will be there in the box waiting for the delivery from Hudson-Odoi and Elanga. So I like Chris Wood, and obviously next week he's got Ipswich. So that's the team as things stand. I guess if ISAK were to be out or to miss out, let's say we don't even get news that he's out, but he does miss out, I've got Robinson on the bench. Like, let's assume Mateta's also out as well. So it would be a 4-5-1, and my team would be fine. I don't really want to play a 4-5-1 this week with my only forward playing against Man City and having Dango in the team. I don't think Dango just wouldn't play at all. So I don't think we run the risk of having 10 players. I think he'll get a cameo of some kind. It just might only be a few minutes. So I guess I can get away, even if ISAK is out, and even if Mateta is out, and even if Dango makes a cameo appearance, I could still have 11 players this week, and the team would still look okay. So as a result, I am leaning towards rolling, but I am looking at it and thinking, do I make a transfer? And I think if ISAK and Mateta are both confirmed out, there's a chance I make a forward transfer there. Or do I just sell Dango? And like I said, just suck up that it was a bad transfer, get it sorted, and then be very happy. Like if I sold Dango to Semenyo or Cliver, I'd be buzzing with my starting 11 this week. So that is how it is as things stand. We're going to take a look at my watch list now, the players that I'm considering for 28, 29, and 30. And then I want to show you what my team's actually going to look like in the blank game week. So just very briefly looking at my watch list before we again look at game week 29 and 30, before that game week 31 wildcard. Here are the players that I'm currently considering. So starting with the defenders, for me it's Gvardiol. 5 goals in the Premier League this season. Over the last 10 game weeks, he is third for expected goal involvement amongst defenders. It doesn't matter whether he's playing as more of a centre-back or more of a left winger. The man is so technically gifted. He can score goals from outside of the box with either foot. He's brilliant in the air from set pieces as well. He's just a great asset to own. And City are improving defensively. I think Nico Gonzalez has been a great addition, but just generally, I think Pep's starting to work out some solutions. I'm not saying City are as good defensively as they used to be. They're nowhere near the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal, and even to some extent someone like a Fulham. But with the fixtures they've got, Brighton at home in 29 and Leicester at home in 30, I think Gvardiol for those 2 weeks is great. And then I might even keep him on my wild card, given that Man City could potentially double in 33, depending on my chip strategy. So for me, Gvardiol is the defender that I'm most likely to bring in. And of course, I'm likely to sell Trent in 29, so I don't think that'll be an issue in terms of funds. If I bring in another defender, which is quite possible, the 3 that I'm looking at right now are Ait-Nouri, Milenkovic, and Howson. On Howson, I kind of feel like I've missed the boat slightly with the defence. Like, I don't actually love the fixture in 29 for a defender. Like, I've got Brian Mbeumo. Lots of other people have Wissa. You kind of back them to score in any given game. And I don't necessarily want to create a clash. Like, if I've got Mbeumo, maybe I just back Brentford to score. So my other 2 options are, like I said, Ait-Nouri and Milenkovic with Southampton and Ipswich. I've got no Southampton and Ipswich players, so I might as well back that clean sheet, I think. So as of right now, it's either Ait-Nouri or a Forest defender. I'd actually like to go for Nico Williams, but I think there's a chance Moreno starts one of the upcoming games. It might be the Man United game, potentially in 30, but based on the way that my team's set up, I probably need to start this defender in game week 30. So I think I would just pay the extra for Milenkovic if I can afford it. Another player I've been looking at is actually Wan-Bissaka at 4.4 if I need to go fairly cheap. But I think if I can afford it, Ait-Nouri and Gvardiol are the 2 defenders that stand out. In terms of the midfielders, I've got to put the Bournemouth mids on there because my only Bournemouth midfielder is very unlikely to start. So if I'm going to go out there and buy a midfielder, considering they've got Brentford at home and Ipswich at home, so for the attackers, they're great fixtures, I think I need to add a Bournemouth midfielder ideally. And I'd probably go for Semenyo because he's cheaper. Not because I think he's better. In fact, I think Kluivert's slightly better. But if I want to bring an Erling Haaland and a Gvardiol, money does become a little bit of an issue. So I'll probably go Semenyo. In terms of the other midfielders, I like the Forest defenders against Ipswich and midfielders. I like Forest midfielders against Ipswich and Manchester United. So Gibbs White and Elanga. Again, because money's going to be tight. Elanga is someone you'll see in a second that I'm highly considering bringing in. I know he's dropped off in terms of his output a little bit, but I'm impressed every time I watch him. He takes some set pieces as well. I think Elanga's a serious option at 5.3. Jared Bowen is on there. 2 decent fixtures in 29-30. You could definitely do worse. I don't think I'll have the funds to get to Bowen, but he's on there as a consideration. And Savinho, I think he started the last 4 Premier League games. If I feel like his chances of starting in 29 and 30 are quite good, then maybe he comes into the picture as well. For the forwards, Erling Haaland. I can probably only bring in 1 forward, and I'm sure I want it to be him, because I want to captain him in 29, and I want the option to captain him in 30 against Leicester. Whether or not I keep him on the wild card will depend on my chip strategy, because if I free hit in 33, I might not need Haaland, whereas if I free hit in 34, I probably do. So I'm not committing to keeping him for the rest of the season or anything like that. But for 29 and 30, I think the upside is there to attack. Marmoush is obviously an option as well. I don't think Marmoush for me is... I think I've got his price complete. I think he's like 7.2. Ignore that. But I don't think for me he's anywhere close to Haaland. I think they're separate players. Like, they're in completely different price points. They're completely different options. Just because they play for the same team, don't consider it Marmoush versus Haaland. Haaland is much better, but Marmoush is also a great option at his price, which I think is 7.2. And then we've got Wissa and Beto. Wissa is just so consistent in terms of the chances that he gets. He's not the greatest finisher, but I like the underlying data for him. And then with Beto, if I need to make another forward transfer, which I might do, let's say that Mateta and ISAK are both out for a while or whatever, or I want to free up the funds in another way, bringing in Beto frees up a lot of money. So that is a real option for me if I want to go down that route instead. His underlying data has been really good since Moyes came in. We think he's on penalties in the absence of Calvert-Lewin. Just a really, really solid option. So there we go. Those are the players that I'm considering for, like I said, not even 28 really, because I don't think I'll make a transfer this week, but 29 and 30. So let's assess then how the team might come together and how bad it looks for the blank game week. So guys, I've jumped over to Fantasy Football Hub to do a little bit of planning ahead. And as always, if you do want to get access to this feature and all of the other features on their site, if I just hover over Toolbox, you can see all of the crazy stuff. Assistant Manager points predictions, which can be really good. Fixture Analyzer, player comparison. You can even get access to Ben Krellin's planner through this, by the way, which allows you to plan ahead with the predicted doubles and blanks. I highly advise checking out Fantasy Football Hub. There is a link down below in the description. You get 30% off if you use that link. It supports me a little bit, of course, because they're a partner of the channel, but also I genuinely use this sort of every single day. I genuinely do. So this is what we're going to be doing right now, is just using this feature to kind of plan ahead. It's the My Team feature. So let's say in 2028 I do roll, but again, I want your opinion on whether I should be rolling or whether I should be selling Dango Ouattara. Going into 29, if I just scroll down, what I've done is benched Salah, ISAK, Munoz, because that's what I'm currently planning as of right now. Munoz is fairly cheap, so he can sit on my bench quite easily. I've got a little bit of money tied up in him, but then he's got Southampton in game week 30, and I think I want to keep him on my game week 31 wildcard. So for all of those reasons, it makes sense for me to just keep Munoz. And with ISAK and Salah, I've just got a lot of money tied up in them. I'll lose about 0.4 to 0.5 million on each of them if I sell them. And then want to buy them back, of course. And I think from 31 and beyond, I do want Salah and ISAK in my team. ISAK's obviously got that double in 32, but even in 30, Brentford, 31, Leicester, there is no chance, unless he's not fit for that period, that I'm going to want to go without ISAK. And then Mohamed Salah, he's got Everton, Fulham, West Ham, Leicester, Spurs. It doesn't really matter whether I free hit in 33 or 34. I think Salah's just an elite player to have. So for those reasons, I think they are the three players that make the most sense in terms of having them on the bench. So if I bench those and scroll back up to my 11, I've got 4 free transfers for 29 if I don't make a move in 28. And I've got 3 players blanking. Well, actually only 2 players blanking in my start 11, which is Trent and Mateta. And then Vandenberg is injured and has a rubbish fixture anyway, and he's pretty cheap. So those are the 3 priority positions to sort, are Mateta, Trent, and Vandenberg. But if I also want to get Haaland in, I've got to sell Palmer or Salah, so likely Palmer. Plus, Dango is an issue, because he might not start. In fact, he probably won't start. And Enzo's a bit of an issue, because he's a bit of a rubbish asset unless he's got a good fixture. He's got a good fixture, I like him, but Arsenal away is the opposite of that. So let's go through, make the transfers, and then see what might happen. And again, 4 free transfers, 1.9 million in the bank. There is the chance to take a hit, though, as well. So the first move, Mateta to Haaland. That gives me minus 5.5 million, right? So obviously, if I'm going to buy Haaland for Mateta, I have to free up quite a lot of money. The next move I want to make is actually Trent for Gvardiol. That still only gives me 4.2 in the bank. Sorry, that still leaves me needing to find 4.2. So that would be 2 transfers. I'll have 2 left. The next move then is to sell Palmer. And because I have Dango, who's not great, but I really want a Bournemouth midfielder for Brentford and for Ipswich, it's a bit boring. I think I'd go Semenyo. Really boring transfer. If I can afford Kluivert, maybe I go there to just attack the possibility of getting a penalty or maybe a set-piece assist or something like that. So that actually frees up to 0.9 million, right? But I also would have Vandenberg as an issue. So if I then also take out Vandenberg, I would have 4.9. So let's say I do just go for my favourite option right now, which is 8 Nuri. So as of right now, I can afford that. That would be 4 transfers to bring in Haaland, Semenyo, Gvardiol, and 8 Nuri. That means if I just make those 4, I've not taken a hit, and I can field 11 players. Obviously, if money gets tight, I can go for Howson or Semedo if I want to stay with Wolves, or Nico Williams. I don't have to go for 8 Nuri if by the time I make these transfers in 29, price changes have screwed me up a little bit and I can't quite afford it. But for me, the priority is Haaland and Gvardiol. And even I could even go for like an Alanga instead of Semenyo. Now, the decision that I'm going to have, and again, it might not plan out exactly this way. Let me put the armband on Haaland. Oh no, I need to make the transfers. Let me make the transfers. Let me put the armband on Haaland so that you can see exactly how that would look. That puts my game week rating up to 93%. Already, that's fine. Like, that's not a hit. My team's looking absolutely decent for game week 29. It's not great, though. Let's be real. I've got Dango in the midfield who probably won't play. I've got Enzo. So, do I then want to take a hit to sell one or both of Dango and Enzo? My concern with selling Enzo is I only have now 0.2 in the bank. Who am I selling Enzo to? Wanyeri? Maybe. But is Wanyeri that much better than Enzo? He's probably slightly better, but is it worth a hit? I don't think so. Is there anyone worth buying? Like, let's look at the midfielders here. Up to, I'd have 4.9 million. And that's, again, assuming that I have the 0.2. I mean, it is a really dire group of players there, really. I don't want any of those. I don't want any of them. How much is Wanyeri? Why isn't Wanyeri on this list? 4.6, okay. I don't want any of them, really. Is there... Brooks? No. No. Let's just say no. So if that's the case, well then I'd have to sell Dango, which is fine. If I sell Dango, I'd have 5.3 million, which at the moment gives me exactly enough funds to do Alanga. So I could do Dango Ouattara to Alanga. My question then would be, is Alanga 4 points better than Dango? If Dango doesn't start, maybe, but could he do damage off the bench? Again, a cameo against tired legs for the final 20 to 30 versus Alanga for 70 to 80, maybe 90 minutes. And remember, this is for a hit as well. I'm just a little bit unsure. So, as of right now, I might not take a hit and just field a slightly suboptimal 11. Because when I look at this, the only player that I'm really missing in terms of highly owned assets, because remember, obviously, Cunha's not available now. I think, I could be wrong, but I think it's just Kluivert in terms of players that could really damage my rank and that I'd really ideally like to own. I can't afford Kluivert unless I go for someone like Nico Williams instead of 8 Nuri, and that can maybe squeeze in depending upon price changes. But then at the same time, could Semenyo in a single week or in a couple of weeks outscore Kluivert? Of course he could. So it's probably not worth the sacrifice there. So I guess that's what the rough plan is at the moment. So the team, if you're listening to this rather than watching, the team would read out Pickford against West Ham at home, Gabriel against Chelsea at home, Robinson against Spurs at home, 8 Nuri against Southampton away, Gvardiol against Brighton at home. Not ideal to be playing a back four, but that's a fine back four for me to be playing. Midfield would then be Semenyo against Brentford, Mbeumo against Bournemouth, Dango against Brentford, and Enzo against Arsenal. That midfield stinks. It really does. Like, considering the team that a lot of other people will have, that is a stinky midfield. But then the forward line is Wood against Ipswich away and Haaland against Brighton at home. And I think Haaland would be getting the armband. That would be the purpose of bringing him in. Obviously, there is a world in which I don't sell Palmer, don't go for Haaland, and then it becomes a lot easier to get a better team. But then I don't have Haaland for 29 and 30. And I think the upside is there to attack with it. Because not that many people, I think, will be able to get to Haaland or will want to risk it. They will say Haaland hasn't been quite at it. So I think the upside is there for me. So that's the plan as things stand. Just to show you in 30, if I make those moves, this is why I'm not really planning a wildcard in 30, right? So the team would be, Pickford's got a rubbish fixture, but then Gabriel against Fulham, Gvardiol against Leicester, Munoz against Southampton. That backline is beautiful. The midfield looks pretty strong other than Dango. I could, of course, use a transfer, or again, just keep him and hope that he starts after the FA Cup quarterfinals. So Salah, Semenyo, Dango, and Mbeumo. And then the front line of ISAK, Wood, and Haaland. So I think the team would look fine in 30, but then going towards 31... the fixtures start to switch up for a lot of my players, and at that point, we'd have a lot more information about the future blanks and doubles. So that's the plan as things stand. Like I said, make sure to check out Fantasy Football Hub down below, and let me know what you think of it. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 28 team selection and a little bit of planning ahead as well. And if you have enjoyed today's video, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. And if you're still watching at this point, You're an absolute legend, and you probably support the channel quite a lot, so thank you for that. Please do go and check out FPL Therapy. So much effort goes into that podcast every week behind the scenes. It's probably like a 12-hour day when I do it, because I have to travel down from Nottingham to London. I sit there all day editing, then going through all the comments. So it's quite a long job. So if you do appreciate the content and you want to support a little bit more, please do go and check out FPL Therapy. I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.